Let's take the discussion on markets forward with Sunil Subramaniam from Sundaram AMC also joining us today. Sunil, afternoon. In fact, let's get your take on the earnings quality of corporate India so far. A good chunk has come, autos, banks, IT. What has your take been on the quality of earnings so far?
I think banks have been on expected lines because we've seen the low interest rates during COVID. Banks lock on to long-term funding for that, and so as now credit is beginning to rise, I think you're beginning to see the effect on NIMs. So I think banks have more or less been on par. Auto companies, I think also the results are coming out better because I think the commodity pressure which was there same period last year is not there this year. So there's a YOY benefit to the auto companies, and auto demand is picking up and is strong. So I think those two have been quite okay so far. So we'll wait for the full earnings to come out before we form a view. But I think also in terms of the outlook that's coming through in the earnings discussions seems to be fairly okay in terms of their projection for the rest of the year. So I don't see a major cause for worry from the earnings that have come out so far. It's more or less on predictable lines.
Sunil, what is your take on budget? It's just round the corner. From a market standpoint, one fear is that the government may tilt towards populism a bit. The others say that no, there would be continuity on policy front and adequate push will be given on areas which require push. What side do you think it will be a balancing act?
No, I think that they will continue on the reforms and continue on this. This fact that this is the last pre-election budget, I think a lot is being made of it in the media. But I think if you look at it, public has very short memories. Any kind of giveaways they give now, they're not able to remember 15 months or 18 months from now. So to me, I think what the government will do is to do those things which will have a lasting impact, which will last through the election season, right? So what typically worries people in election season is the fact of inflation. So government will definitely want to keep inflation under control. That's one thing. The second thing that the key here is that job creation is critical, right? And the next 15 months, the government has to do all its efforts to create jobs. So I expect the infrastructure related to real estate and housing, which are the biggest employment generators, to continue. I expect MSMEs, which again are big employers, to continue to get support from the government. So I would see that the government will try to channelize the expenditure in the government along lines that will leave a lasting impact on the voting population. So here I'm making the remark on voting population because to me, the middle class is not the voting population, right? The middle class discusses a lot, makes demands a lot. But if you see post-COVID, the middle class has actually seen a rise in their incomes. It's the marginal class which has got impacted in the COVID case, and the other ones also go and vote. So to the extent that they will try to make sure that the trickle-down effect to the bottom of the pyramid in whatever they do. So direct benefit transfers, making sure that whatever schemes they do, that money consistently goes to the bottom of the pyramid. These are the things likely to focus on. But I don't expect any major giveaways because that comes in and goes away and people won't remember that. So I am contrary to what many people are expecting. I don't expect this to be a populist budget.
Sunil, the way Maruti numbers came out, Maruti, makes cars for the bulk of the India, the middle class India. The way HUL commentary seem to be suggesting that there is demand recovery in the rural side. What are you gathering from your research, tier 2, tier 3 consumption trends? Is there a slowdown, a risk of a slowdown, or consumption is faring pretty okay?
I think the rural consumption is expected to revive because we've had two successive good crops. We've had a Kharif, which was very good. We have had a Rabi sowing, which was very good, and the Rabi harvest. So I think there's money in rural India, and rural consumption should begin to show an upswing. So I'm bullish on rural consumption and showing up in the second half of the year in pretty strong terms in that context. So I'm hopeful that we have had two summers of washout of discretionary consumption. The summer, which is your refrigerators, your air conditioners, coolers, those which normally in a summer get a big boost because of COVID, you have two washouts. So you have a pretty low base on which to expect a good growth. So I think the coming year will see a strong revival in consumption driven mainly by the rural side, because urban consumption, I think, has reasonably held up. If you look at the Diwali numbers on festival and all of that, they were fairly good.
Sunil, what is your take on, this hypothesis that Chris Wallace, the US, one of the Fed committee members, saying that only 25 basis point hike expected this time round, that will be okay on Feb 1st. And if the messaging from the Fed goes that smaller hikes and fraught with pauses, how do you see the risk on, global risk on actually will pan out from there? And how do you think India will participate in that?
Ajay, I just missed the
Right. Right. I think we lost Sunil over there. But anyway, Sunil, thank you very much for joining us. With that, let's take a short break on that note.